All set? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Pownell Select Board Meeting, October 10th, 2024 at 6:01 PM. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board member roll call.
Angie Rowling.
Carl Strohmeyer.
Mike Gardner.
Jamie Percy.
William Cottrell.
Everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Public comment, approval of minutes, warrants, accounts payable, excess weight permits, updates from town officials, presentation and update on the transfer station, PFAS contamination study and revolving loan amendments, transfer station consulting feasibility study discussion and possible action, highway department request for a credit card discussion and possible action, resignation of a town employee discussion and plan, community capacity building mini grant use discussion and possible action, budget planning requirements for departments and emergency services discussion, Southern Vermont Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Project submission discussion and possible action, public comment and adjourn.
So moved.
Second it.
A motion and a second. On the agenda, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any public comment?
Oh, yes, Jim has his hand up.
Okay. Whenever, Hannah.
Maybe Jenny's started and he's gonna not know it's. Jenny has to go.
Jenny?
Hi. Got me?
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. So the transfer station came up last meeting and it was the first I'd heard any possibility of talking about shutting it down. Where did that come from?
I made.
Hold on, there's public comment. We
Sorry.
don't, that's right.
Oh,
No
okay.
question.
Well,
It's
she
not-
can't
sorry,
answer.
Jenny.
So
It's
let me
not a
say,
question and answer, so if you want to email that question, that's fine.
that's fine. Well, I'm gonna still put them out there. I'm wondering where it
Sure.
came from. I know that that Tara was told to do a feasibility study, but I don't believe she ever came back with anything. And no one seemed surprised when Angie raised it. So it seems to me that there's been discussion about it outside of the meetings because there hasn't been any discussion in the meetings. So it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And if there's conversations going on amongst people, that's a violation of open meeting law.
So
That's it.
I'm gonna say one thing.
Sure.
One person that was extremely surprised, and I wasn't here last meeting, about closing the transfer station was me.
Yeah, I bet.
When I read about the meeting and having a discussion or just whatever happened in that meeting. So that was news to me. as
Well,
the
no
board
one,
chair.
no one in the room reacted like, okay, this is out of nowhere. So
We
that
did,
was a
we
little
did ask,
odd.
you're absolutely right. We did ask for a feasibility study. I asked for that.
but you never got it,
Well,
at least not in a public meeting.
that's, we have it here tonight, but that's,
But it was brought up 2 weeks ago. So
it's just
you
taken,
guys
it's
were-
just taken that long to have BCRC and somebody else put it together. It's been.
So that's, wow.
That's me. There we go.
So the cost of the feasibility study, and I don't want to get into the back and forth, the cost of the feasibility study was what was holding us up. And we just got that the other day, like 2 days ago.
I'm talking about 2 weeks ago when it was raised as a possibility to put on as a ballot article out of nowhere and no one reacted. And that's a little suspicious, guys. Come on. Seriously, like, how did no one, did any of you have you heard that before?
I haven't.
Well,
I
but
brought it
didn't-
up.
I know you did,
I
Angie.
brought it up.
We're not gonna,
I
we're
know
not gonna
you
go.
did, Angie. I watched
We're
it.
not gonna go, we're not gonna go back and forth.
We're
No,
not
I'm not interested.
No, stop. That's
Right.
public
I'm
comment.
not the least bit interested in going back and forth. I'm talking
Right.
about the three gentlemen who didn't express any surprise at this idea that was floated to put it as a ballot article.
Did we vote on it?
Carl,
No.
we're
That's
not
not
going
what
back and forth.
I'm not saying
No.
anything about you voting on it. I'm
Jenny,
saying
do you have
no
anything
one
else?
seemed surprised. So if there's conversation going on outside of select board meetings, that's a violation of open meeting law, and I'm suggesting that you be very careful with that. That's what I'm that's what I'm calling it about.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm calling it about a vote. I'm not saying that that happened. That is not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting there's conversations going on, and that's not allowed. Bye.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Hannah?
Jim's hand is over, but Jim, did you have any public comment?
Jim?
I don't think. There's nobody else.
Okay. Need my glasses back on. Approval of minutes, September 26, 2024, select board meeting.
So moved.
Second it.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any corrections, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Warrants, accounts payable October 4th, $33,168.35.
So moved.
Second it.
Any questions? All those in favor? Payroll October 4th, $12,509.22.
So moved.
Second. Any corrections, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Accounts payable October 11th, $13,911.88.
So moved.
Second. Questions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Payroll October 11th, $11,928.08.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excess weight permits. I'll read them off. Joel's already approved these. HL Fuel Company, it is a fleet permit. Duquette Forestry Transportation Incorporated, I believe this one is a fleet permit as well. It's not checked, but I believe it is. Riggs Disler and Company out of Jacksonville, which is a fleet permit. Our Hewlett Trucking, a fleet permit. DJ's Tree Service and Logging, a fleet permit. DJ's Tree Service and Logging, again, a fleet permit. And that's it.
We'll do them all at once.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve the overweight permits.
Any questions? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Updates from town officials. Sorry, we were having trouble with my laptop here, so I'm looking off the paper copy for a little bit. This is from Julie, reminder to all the legal voters of Pownell, general election November 5th, 2024, voting hours are 10 to 7. State of Vermont will be mailing out ballots to all of my active registered voters starting next week. If you choose to vote in person, please do not open your ballot. Bring it to the polling place. I'm going to take it and issue a new ballot. Otherwise, will you have to fill out an affidavit that you had received one, but you didn't return it. If you are voting absentee, the last day for return mailing back your ballot should be no later than Monday, October 28th. Otherwise, you may not receive it before the election on Tuesday, November 5th. There is a secure drop box at the town office, 511 Center Street. It is checked twice daily during the week. Any ballot received after 7 on November 5th will not be counted. Julie Weber. Report from the Highway Department. We solicited quotes for diesel fuel. We received 2 quotes back as follows. John Ray, 20 cents over the rack for delivery. The price for October 9th came in at $237.52 plus the 20 cents was $257.52 for the day. Both came in at 25 cents over rack with the same day pricing was $273.9 per gallon. Both were bid from the Opus Albany rack price. I have to recommend to go to John Ray and Son for this coming year's fuel deliveries. Done business with both of them and both were reputable companies. I'm gonna stop on his report and we're gonna act on that. What's the board's pleasure?
I make a motion that we go along with his
Recommendation.
recommendation of 257.52 from John Ray.
Have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor of going to John Ray this year for this year's fuel?
Aye.
I abstain. I've had dealings with John Ray and they weren't good. So
We don't need to know that, Carl. Just, you can abstain. Don't need to know the reason. On other fronts, we're just about done with paving. The main roads are complete. They just have to come back and do a couple spots, mostly handwork. Fall grading is mostly done. We're just going back around and fix some of the spots on the hills that are rippled up from the dry weather. We'll be starting on the emergency access at the town office, thanks to Tara's work with the state probably next week, which is to the east of the town office going out on Route 7. We're also actively ditching along the roadways. I'm gonna come back to this last section of his because it goes into
So with his,
13.
so with his report, we did paving down at West Menlo. I've had two people contact me and say since it's been paved, they're speeding through there and they were wondering if they could get a sign from the town for speed or children play. Is that something that we could? And
Yeah, we can send it, just send it to him.
okay,
We can probably send that in an email to him so we have a record, that's fine.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Angie. I'm gonna come back to that last section, his recommendation for
Yep.
presentation and update on the transfer station PFAS contamination study and revolving loan amendments, discussion with VHB, WSRF program. All of this information was sent to us ahead of time. The board will have to sign off on the loan amendment attached here. So who's doing the presentation on?
I think he's up right there.
He's up on the screen.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay,
We've got
perfect.
we've got a few other people that are on the call, including Steve Hilfiker, who is a colleague of mine, as well as Sean Donovan with DEC, and Hugo Martinez Cazon, who is also with DEC through the CWSRF program. So I guess our objective tonight was to update you on the status of the project. Steve Hilfiker, who again is a colleague of mine, a professional geologist. He's been working on this project for quite some time with me. We have a presentation, probably 5-8 minutes long, if you'd like to see it, just in terms of an update of what's been done, where we are, where we're headed. And then Sean Donovan from DEC, I think, can speak to the regulatory requirements. And then Hugo, who's also, I believe, on the phone, could speak to a little bit to the funding. And I know there was an email that was sent from Tom Brown, who's the funding administrator for that program, that Tara Parks circulated, and that speaks to that part as well. So if that sounds reasonable to all, I think we could, if you'd like to hear a presentation, I think Steve could share his screen, and if that's amenable to everyone in the room.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, Steve, do you have the ability to share your screen? And I guess Sean or Hugo, is there anything you want to add before we get started here? I think you're muted, Sean.
Sorry about that. Sean Donovan here with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Site Management Section. I've been working on behalf of Vermont DEC to ensure that the assessments are in compliance with our regulatory protocols. And I'm not sure if I've met everyone there, but I hope to meet you all someday in person soon. Pownell's pretty far south of Montpelier, so try to take our pick and choose when we can get down there.
Are you on the line, Ugo? Okay. I guess Steve, if you're ready and you want to share your screen, I think it'd be great to give us an overview of where we are and how we got here and where we're headed next.
Sure. Thanks, Kurt. Let me. All right. Can folks see that on everybody else's end?
Yep. Okay.
So I'm gonna try and run through pretty quickly about what's been done thus far, move into what's being proposed and what comes after that. So we initially performed a phase 1 environmental site assessment of the parcel that currently hosts the transfer station and identified 2 unlined landfill cells, lack of closure documentation for the west landfill cell. That's the one that does not have solar panels on the left as you drive in. And that both received industrial waste streams, potential impacts to groundwater, surface water, soil, and sediment. There was exposed industrial debris on the west end of the west landfill cell, reported burning of waste, so potential for atmospheric deposition of contaminants, and then historic and current waste oil storage practices. Let's see. So we conducted a phase 2 environmental site assessment to follow up on those recognized environmental conditions. And in summary, we didn't see a whole lot of impacts to soil or sediment. We analyzed for quite a few contaminants. A couple of impacts identified in the west end of the west landfill near some of that exposed debris. No impacts to surface water. We collected a sample from the small pond on the right side of the figure there. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's to the right of the west landfill there. We did identify PFAS in groundwater, and we installed quite a few monitoring wells to determine what's going on downgrading on the west landfill. And we identified exceedances of the state Vermont groundwater enforcement standard of 20 parts per trillion. And we had some concentrations up to about 500, 600 parts per trillion in some of these monitoring wells that were sampled. We did identify a little bit of arsenic in one location, and that's been sampled subsequently and confirmed, but it's not ubiquitous everywhere. Not everywhere, but in most wells, like PFAS is just one location. We followed up with another supplemental investigation. The DEC requires that a release to the environment, the nature and extent is defined or determined. So to better understand where groundwater is going and if PFAS is present at down gradient locations, some more monitoring wells were installed along the property boundary. What we're calling the forested wetland is shown here with the blue hatching, but it actually extends off the property boundary. It's a larger wetland area there. Installed some wells out there, piezometers, to sample shallow groundwater. And we identified that PFAS impacts do extend further than our initial monitoring wells. They are present out here in the forested wetland and at the property boundary. And furthermore, it's likely migrating off site due to the exceedances of the groundwater enforcement standard at the property boundary. We also collected some drinking water samples from private water supply wells in the vicinity of the closed landfills. There's some acronyms up here on the screen, but preventive action level, the PAL, is a level of 2 parts per trillion for total PFAS that's regulated by the state of Vermont. If you exceed 2 parts per trillion in your sample, then that requires ongoing monitoring just to confirm and monitor that it's not going to exceed the maximum contaminant level, which is 20 parts per trillion, same concentration as groundwater enforcement standard. We didn't have any exceedances of the maximum contaminant level, but there were exceedances of the preventative action level. I don't know if you can see the concentrations on your end here, but We had some detections up to around 11 parts per trillion. Again, the maximum contaminant level is 20 parts per trillion, so below that, and quite a few detections above the preventative action level of 2 parts per trillion. We have, 2, 3, 4 parts per trillion in some other samples. Some locations, no detections above laboratory reporting limits. So therefore, continued monitoring of these drinking water locations was warranted. Moving toward our latest supplemental investigation, so some off-site monitoring wells were required to further evaluate the extent of PFAS in groundwater and ongoing drinking water sampling, which I'll get onto in the next slide. So shown here, if you can't see the concentrations, you can only see the black coloration in some of these little tables that are posted on here. Black indicates that the concentrations in the sample at that location exceeded the 20 parts per trillion groundwater enforcement standard. So as you can see, we've got some locations off-site that do exceed that concentration. Again, out here at the perimeter of the forested wetland north of the site, we're seeing some concentrations slightly above, a little bit higher out in the forested wetland here. We'll move on a little bit to show you a figure that shows groundwater flow direction, and it'll help you understand why we're seeing some of these detections off-site in this direction, and we're not seeing much up gradient here. Essentially, groundwater flows from this location on the figure at the bottom of the figure toward the north end of the figure, and slightly west, slightly northeast in certain locations. And we'll get into that here in a second. So this is a figure summarizing drinking water sample locations. A few more locations were added based on a request from members of panel. And again, no exceedance of the maximum contaminant level consistent with our prior sampling, but we do have some detections above the preventative action level. So some other sampling was added along Strohmeyer Road here to the west. The landfill shown here surrounded in red. And then quite a bit of sampling on the east side and south side. We also collected a surface water sample from the right of way of the road here to evaluate what's going on with the water that's draining from this forested wetland. As you recall, on a previous slide, we had exceedances of the groundwater enforcement standard in the forested wetland. So we wanted to better understand where the PFAS is going after that. Is it hanging out in the wetland? Is it migrating off in surface water that drains it? So the sample collected from the right of way here did have PFAS at a concentration of 13.5 parts per trillion. There currently is no surface water standard regulated by the state of Vermont. But our prior understanding from DEC is that one may be forthcoming, and EPA is moving in that direction as well. They provide some guidance. It's not regulatory yet. But this helps to better understand where PFAS may be going and potentially migrating back into surface water or groundwater, or potentially consumption of surface water by animals or.
Hard to say where that came from, though.
So this figure may be a little bit complicated. I'll try and explain it briefly. This is intended to show the surficial geology of the site and surrounding vicinity. It's complex. It's not like you'd see out in Kansas, which is a horizontal uniform layer. We're seeing some glacial deposits here that are fairly heterogeneous. They change as you walk from one end of the site to the other. And the groundwater follows some of these layers preferentially opposed to other layers. Groundwater flow typically mimics topography, but in this instance, it does a little bit of that, and it does a little bit of following layers that allows it to flow more readily than other layers. So shown in black here is an esker, and an esker is a river that forms either on top of a glacier, in the glacier, beneath the glacier, and it eventually gets backed up with sediment. But that sediment's fairly large and coarse-grained, like cobbles, gravel, coarse-grained sand. So as you can imagine, water can flow through it a little bit more readily after it's been deposited here in the ground. So after the glacier leaves, it leaves a ridge. That's this esker here. We've got some glacial outwash mapped in green. That's, if you've seen pictures of glaciers or been to one, there's streams that come out at the end of the glacier. A lot of sediment deposited by those streams as they slow down. And but they're still moving pretty quick. So they drop coarse grain sediment at that location, gravel, sands. Again, groundwater can flow pretty fast through the green outwash layer and the black esker layer. We've got what's called here a pluvial deposit. In this case, it's mapped as a lake deposit. So those are finer grain sediments, things silts, potentially clays. Groundwater does not move through those layers as readily due to the fine grain content. And then till is mapped here in blue, and that can underlay some of these layers. Till can be pretty tight. A lot of fine grained sediment in those layers, and it's hard for groundwater to move through that as well. So these contours shown here are not topographic contours, they are groundwater contours, and groundwater flows in a north direction. So if you were to drop a bucket of water, just to help explain this, on the bottom of the figure here, it would flow to the north and towards the forested wetland. But there is some channelized flow along these layers that allow water to flow through more readily to the north and northeast towards this gravel pit that you can kind of see in this area. We have some wells there, and we have a PFAS exceedance at this location. So some complex geology and preferential groundwater flow really dictating where this PFAS is moving. So the next steps, we've got a proposed investigation to further define the extent of PFAS down gradient from the closed landfill cells. Our proposed wells are shown in this pink coloration near the top of the figure. There's 5 of them. We're also going to replace 2 destroyed piezometers. Those are essentially groundwater monitoring wells that are just put in by hand out in the forested wetland. Presumably some ice heaving in the wintertime may have destroyed those. Those are fairly simple and easy to install. Unfortunately, due to the particular geology out here, we need to use a sonic rig and also due to the deep depth of groundwater. The cheaper and faster, more efficient rigs just can't get through the larger grain sizes like cobbles. And even if they can, it just gets bogged down as it gets deeper towards this deeper groundwater layer. So the sonic rig is powerful. Unfortunately, it does cost more money, but it's more likely to get the job done than the GeoProbe smaller rig. There's also going to be some additional surface water sample locations. Those are pretty easy to grab. We just collect those by hand. But due to PFAS flowing to the north of the property here, these 2 locations have been added by these blue squares. There's a black square in the middle of these blue squares near the central top portion of the figure here. There are some potential springs that are mapped that originate in that area and flow to the north. So we want to confirm that PFAS isn't migrating from groundwater into these springs further north off site. Drinking water, again, because the detection is above the preventive action level, those locations will be continued to be monitored. Proposing to add 3 more locations along Maple Grove Road here. DW1, DW2, DW3, you can see near the right upper portion of the figure. And we're going to resample select groundwater monitoring locations. We can whittle back so that we don't sample every single location. We'll select some locations that are either at the edge of what we're monitoring or some of the higher PFAS concentrations. All locations will be gauged for depth of groundwater so we can understand groundwater flow, though. That's a fairly quick task relative to sampling. We are proposing 2 rounds of groundwater and drinking water sampling. Again, long-term monitoring just is required here. Really, the sensitive receptor, though, is drinking water. That's what's being consumed. So that's pretty important to monitor. So proposing an initial round after these new wells go in, and then a supplemental round in the spring of 2025. So after the extent of PFAS has been delineated, meeting the DEC requirement, the next step would be the evaluation of corrective action alternatives. And so you're required by the state to analyze 2 corrective action alternatives. Typically, a 3rd one is included as well. All of these alternatives will include capping and closing the west landfill cell. It hasn't received formal closure documentation. There is some exposed debris on the end of the landfill there. A post-closure monitoring plan. There is one in place for the east landfill cell, but that does not include the west landfill cell, and those prescribe long-term monitoring. And then design point of entry treatment systems that are installed at house. And it's fairly easy to design and understand the cost of those, and that'll just be at the ready in case PFAS concentrations through this monitoring exceed the current standard of 20 parts per trillion, or in the event the maximum contaminant level is reduced. Currently, EPA has lower standards for public drinking water sources. Those do not include private drinking water sources at this time, but regulations can change. So here's just a taste of what we're thinking. Although the extent of PFAS isn't fully determined, we can still think about and understand what we might propose as some of these corrective action alternatives. So again, all will include capping the west landfill cell. The alternatives that we look at are a more aggressive approach. Let's see what we can do to clean this up at a much faster rate. A more practical approach, balances economics and just remediation and slowing down the migration of these PFAS contaminants. And then alternative 3 here, we're just looking at a monitoring approach. It's less upfront invasive and just more let's monitor and document that PFAS concentrations do not exceed the MCL, and just understand where they are in the groundwater as well. So alternative 1, aggressive approach could include a subsurface slurry wall with pump and treat system. Again, that's pretty aggressive. All of these will include long-term monitoring of groundwater, surface water, drinking water. Alternative 2, the more practical approach. So you can use one of these cheaper, faster drilling systems, especially west of the west landfill cell, to inject liquefied carbon into the ground. And PFAS really likes to bind to carbon. That's what's also used in filters that go into homes. It's more of a granulated carbon in those filters, but PFAS binds up to it, so it doesn't remove PFAS, but it keeps it from migrating further. It binds it up in the subsurface and acts as a filter and somewhat of a trap there, and it just sequesters it on site and keeps it from flowing further. Alternative 3, the more monitoring approach, that's long-term monitoring and preparedness to install those point of entry treatment systems at drinking water sources. And then once a corrective action alternative is identified, that's what's written up in the corrective action plan and actually implemented. There's a cost estimate included in the corrective action plan, and that's reviewed by the state and the town of Pownell, and then ultimately implemented. I don't need to talk too much about this slide, but there were quite a few challenges here that have added to just trying to get this all wrapped up. Access agreements to install wells and other properties that aren't owned by the town are difficult. Some folks don't want sampling occurring on their properties, others do. So that can be difficult to navigate. Coordinating drinking water sampling, just getting the same date and time to get together with everybody. The terrain, the complex geology, PFAS sampling procedures are pretty stringent. And of course the drilling conditions that I already touched on. That's all I've got. Happy to take any questions pertaining to the slides. Otherwise, we can move on and further discuss.
Anyone have any questions on the slides?
Nope.
No. Okay, no questions, I guess, on the slides, Steve, or good there.
Okay, thank you.
So our next step, Kurt, is I guess the next step is to talk about that loan, right?
But yeah, and I think, Sean, do you want to add that?
Not necessarily, Steve. You did a really good job summarizing the kind of the major points of our site history, the investigations, and notably the next steps. I should say that in those slides that Steve had up, there was the maximum contaminant level and the groundwater enforcement standards. As it pertains to PFAS and the regulatory sort of framework, there is a good possibility that Vermont Department of Health and Vermont DEC, Agency of Natural Resources, at some point in the future will be administering or switching to the current standards, and will incorporate some of the EPA Region 1 MCLs, which were issued earlier this year, and those concentrations are far less than the current regulatory threshold. So it's something I just wanted to put out there for the record, and if and when at that point occurs, we'll have to consider that in our conceptual site model and how we manage that, really in particular as it pertains to those drinking water supply wells. I don't have a whole lot more to offer at this point in time, but I'm certainly happy to take any questions as they may come up.
I have one thing, and actually it's for Steve. Tom Shuey, by the way, if you don't remember me. But
I remember you, Tom.
I just want to let you know that the pond on the other side of the road has been drained. So we don't have that anymore. We have a stream and then some little rivulets running down through there, I think coming out of the bank. But we don't have that pond isn't there. So that's a little bit of a surface change that you may want to be aware of.
I appreciate that, Tom. That's very helpful in terms of understanding what we need to prepare for as we head down there.
So, I mean, I've noticed that there's a main stream coming down through, but I can still see stuff that must be coming off of the bank going out towards that stream. So it's just a little bit different. I mean, you can, if you want me to take pictures and send them to you, I will. Just show you how things are running down there. Now that that's gone, we have an idea of that too, the surface water.
Well, I appreciate that, Tom. If you happen to be down there, I mean, don't go out of your way. That would be helpful.
However, across the road, it's not that tough to do.
All right, I know it's way down there.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. Otherwise, we can certainly check it out when we're down there. But I appreciate the offer.
I think Megan might have a question.
Yes, I do. We were used to associating PFAS with industrial sites and pollution from like Saint-Gobain and so on. I just wonder where this PFAS comes from, and is it part of the problem that we have overall with our garbage in this country and the amount of plastic that's in our garbage and other toxins, and what can we do about that?
Steve, you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
I'd be happy to kick off what we know about this specific instance, and Kurt, feel free to jump in. So during our phase 1 environmental site assessment, there were some paperwork that was identified that pointed out that some industrial waste was received at this location. However, a lot of household waste can have PFAS in it as well. It was used in Teflon for pans, waterproofing, so think Gore-Tex, even grease proofing, so fast food wrappers just to keep grease from soaking through, carpets, couches, clothing, just anything you want stain resistant or waterproof, water resistant. But some more industrial applications such as insulated wire coating, potential waterproofing for leather fabrics was another potential waste stream that ended up here. And then the Greyhound racetrack, I don't know if they were, serving fast food and maybe use some grease proofing in the wrappers, but that's another potential source. So unfortunately, both industrial and household items, including cosmetics.
Those things are no longer produced then. So this is all old. This is historic garbage, so to speak.
I can touch on this a little bit, Steve. I mean, I know where most of this stuff came from, obviously living here. In that west landfill that's not properly capped and closed, that was from industrial waste. I don't think the racetrack contributed very much at all, to be perfectly honest with you, but the two factories that were here in town, dumped there almost daily, you know, when it was open. So I believe that you're gonna find that most of that PFAS contamination was from those two factories that we had here in town. On that, and that's where they dumped, was on that west side. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I remember seeing some documentation about a wire company, a wire manufacturing company that had dumped waste there, and there was actually some effort, Tom, when we first started off with the town trying to track down those as responsible parties, and it kind of fizzled, if I remember correctly. But there was a letter that was part of that phase one back in 2018 that had something to do with the wire manufacturing.
Teflon coating.
Yeah.
Oh, it's-
So, I mean, in terms of it going, you know, you see it in the news all the time. This is an emergent contaminant, and I think there's effort being made to minimize, reduce it being used in consumer products going forward. Unfortunately, you kind of live with a legacy as the owner of the landfill, and you know, you're not the only one, but that's about the best I can give you in terms of where we're headed in the future. And you know, frankly, had that landfill been capped historically appropriately with a semi-impermeable barrier, you wouldn't have this infiltration of, you know, you got the soup and you got water going through it, and the water's got to go somewhere, and it's picking up a contaminant on the way out. So had that been capped, you know, 2 decades ago, we probably wouldn't see this issue as prominently as we are now.
Mhm. Totally agree with that. Yeah, totally agree. Any board members, any more questions?
No, I don't. Most of mine got answered.
Well, moving forward, is it something that we have to do? What if Pownell said, no, we didn't want to do it anymore? We have to do it, correct?
Absolutely.
I suppose I could help answer that question on behalf of the Vermont DEC, the regulatory authority. The answer, any site with a release to the environment, whether it's a landfill site or whether it's a residential property, if there's a release of a contaminant to the environment and testing shows that it exceeds a regulatory threshold, whether it's soil, groundwater, sediment, surface water, there is a requirement by law to delineate the extent and magnitude, identify the source, delineate the extent and magnitude, and develop a corrective action. And as Steve pointed out, the next step, you know, we're still, I guess, unfortunately, we're still in the assessment phase. We're still trying to wrap our arms around how far widespread the issue is here. And so it's very difficult to develop a corrective action if you don't know the extent of the issue that you're dealing with. So, but as Steve pointed out, and I'd like to reiterate, of the evaluating the corrective action alternatives doesn't mean that there's going to be this full-blown huge source removal and pump and treat, and there very likely could be a scenario in which we cap the landfill to prevent any further migration and do long-term monitoring, essentially, as long as the impacts to sensitive receptors, such as primarily here drinking water supply wells, as long as those impacts to those receptors are within the acceptable limits of our Department of Health and Department of DEC, they're below a regulatory threshold, or if they're above, they're being treated. You know, this is something that we can sort of just monitor on an annual basis potentially.
And for long term, do you mean 20 years, 30 years, or forever?
It's so hard. Dealing with PFAS, Kurt did coin the phrase here that this is an emerging contaminant of concern, and so there's a lot of unknown still, even though we've come a long way to better understand this contaminant issue or these compounds. You probably have seen that they're called forever chemicals because they don't biodegrade in nature. So
it's forever.
I cannot speculate as to how long a monitoring program would look for this site. But generally speaking, and we have hundreds of sites throughout the state that are in this long-term monitoring regime. And so generally speaking, they'll be monitored until those contaminant levels decrease to below a regulatory threshold.
So it's capped until they goes down far enough.
What is the cost of panel years?
And I think, over time, in
I
our
know.
long-term monitoring conditions, we're always reevaluating what well network we're sampling. And if we have data that's consistent year after year after year, there doesn't need to be resampled year after year. It's not uncommon to have 15 wells in the beginning, and then you do 10, and then you do 3, and then you're monitoring a few. So, we're always trying to whittle it down to just make sure we're sampling the ones that that are needed. But that's always dependent on the data. There's no point in getting the same data if we have 20 years of the same data in certain wells.
Okay.
So it's an unfortunate situation. We're certainly empathetic to it, but the law is the law, I guess, and that's kind of where we are, unfortunately.
Ideally, I guess I'd throw out there that ideally, once we have some sort of capping mechanism in place, I'd love to try to reinvigorate the potential for solar on this site, which could produce some revenue on an annual basis, which could help offset any monitoring costs related to groundwater monitoring. So it's just a point to throw out there.
That's how it all started.
Yeah,
that's how it all started. Correct. Yeah,
exactly.
So I do see Ugo on the screen, but Ugo, are you there?
Yeah, I was struggling to see if I could unmute. Am I muted still?
Nope.
Okay, I was doing the Alt-A thing and it wasn't working. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So you were saying, Kurt, what was your question to me?
So I guess I was just sort of transitioning into the CWSRF and funding mechanism, the fact that, this site, given the fact that the town is technically the responsible party, the umbrella, other funding sources are kind of limited, but we were able to leverage this typically an infrastructure money to support this emerging contaminant investigation. So I maybe going over that email that Tom Brown sent that summarizes, the subsidy, et cetera, and how that all works.
Yeah, I can give that a try. That's not really my bailiwick, but I'm in the water investment division. I'm it's kind of I don't like the title because it doesn't really say what I actually do, but for the sake of what I'm called, it's the design engineer. But really, Sean is the regulator for the state, and the Clean Water Revolving Fund, state revolving fund money can be used for covering certain types of site investigations. So before I was assigned to this project, it was determined that there would be some money from the SRF, the State Revolving Loan Fund, assigned to this project. So that's a loan. And after it's awarded as a loan, Tom, he's in finance section of our program. They can make the determination that up to what is allowed can be a forgiven loan or a subsidy. So that's why you saw that email that came out today, that the planning loan amendment could be eligible for a 50% additional subsidy. It could be up to $100,000, and that subsidy would be with 0% interest and paid back over a 5-year period. So that's regarding the funding that is allocated right now to this project. And as both Sean and Steve and Kurt indicated, there will be likely an ongoing part of this project of further monitoring and delineating the situation. So when Kurt and Steve come up with what are the next steps, and Sean concurs with that, then at that point we can talk about what cycle of seeking funding for the next effort we're in. The federal government, not the state government, has determined that a large bank of money is going to be available for emerging contaminants. So I can't say what this project will be eligible for or will receive, but that's certainly something to have the select board be aware of and be involved with the application process and the application cycle. So to make sure that you apply for that money, to make sure that you're in line with a good project for that resource. Again, I can't promise you that that's going to be awarded to Pownell, but it's money that is by and large allocated to deal with PFAS contamination.
And if I could just add, Ugo, you're referring to kind of the future, the cost of cleanup, cost of the actual project, because we're still in the planning phase. That's where the 50% subsidy comes in. But once there's an actual cleanup plan, there's a potential that it could be 100% subsidized if this application goes through and it's successful. So once we get there, that's the ideal scenario where it would be funded. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ugo, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what you were alluding to, correct?
Well, that's a possibility, but I can't, I can't predict what other projects are going to be competing for that. But yes, you're right. The thing that I would, since we're talking about it and, for the sake of the town, to be aware of it, it's, I can send you the name of the document because it's a very long soup of words, but it's called the Implementation of the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Provisions of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And that's from EPA, March 8, 2022. I can send that along to you, Kurt, and you can distribute. But that document, it's a memo from the EPA. That document explains what kind of money is available for what kind of investigation and what kind of mitigation measure. We don't need to get into the details. It's written out and it's pretty straightforward. So that's what Kurt is alluding to.
So the bottom line for us as a board is basically we need to sign off on this loan agreement because which has gone from, if my figures are correct here off this email, has gone from 19,534 to 368,589, and now we're looking for another 168,800, which brings us to a little over $500,000 total.
That's correct.
537,390.
That's correct.
If the numbers are correct here. So, and from what I heard just a few minutes ago from Sean is we don't have a choice. We're required to take care of this by law, which we had to ask the question, right? We kind of knew the answer. It's one of those questions you ask that you already know the answer to before you ask it, right? So basically we need to sign this loan agreement to keep this moving forward.
And our new payment would be $28,860.
On what?
The loan.
Loan payment.
Yeah, the loan payment.
Right,
I'm talking about the total number.
right. So that would go from 9/1/27 to 9/1/36.
So,
That's a lot of money.
well, it doesn't start till 2027. And that payment is 28,000 and change, right? Whatever it was.
28,860, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the bottom line is we have to keep moving forward with this mitigation. I mean, we don't have a choice. And I mean, it's, you guys are doing what you have to do, and we totally understand that, or at least I do. So I guess that's why we're here tonight, right? Is to sign that loan agreement or to talk about it.
We're talking about it.
and get the, and obviously gather the information that you guys had for us, which was pretty informative, to be honest with you. Right, that summarizes pretty much what we're trying to do here?
I believe so. If that question is directed to me, I would say
Yeah,
yes.
I agree. And I put the memo title right there in the chat. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Since you're talking about future money, I think that memo might help you. I know it's got a lot of technical, chemical, mumbo jumbo stuff, but it also talks about the money, and it's a good resource to have.
Thank you, General Cable.
Yep, one wire.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, same building and the tanning company, so. Yeah. And thank you for whoever didn't cap the west landfill properly, line it and do the thing the right way the first time.
Moving forward, do we believe that these monitoring wells that you're putting in will be the last set of wells, or do we expect more in the future? And then that being said, is there a time frame that you'll be monitoring these wells and then maybe make a plan moving forward?
To answer your first question, we bumped them out pretty darn far this time with the intention that we thought we did bump them out pretty far last time, and we bumped them out really far this time. So we're hoping we're getting some clean samples at the extent that geology is pretty interesting. But regardless, I can't sign my life away. But our intention is not to continue to play this, continue this investigation. We want to move to getting something done as much as you do. So in parallel, I mean, we've already started looking at the options for cleanup. We just can't submit a cleanup plan until we have the extent. So we're sort of doing those two pieces in parallel. And the original loan, we didn't think there was going to be 3 rounds of investigation. So we included the cost of an evaluation of corrective action alternatives and a corrective action plan in that first loan. So the plan is to just kind of in parallel move into that phase as we're doing this investigation, if the data is suggesting we're allowed to, in terms of what the state requires.
I got a question. Or I assume that the testing for the wells goes until you guys don't find any contaminants. Am I correct? So if, let's say you do these initial tests and we don't come up with any more contaminants, then there we are. But if we find some, then we have to go again to get.
When you say again, we're going to have to monitor it for a long time to make sure it's not changing. Right now we're finding out how big it is. Once we find out how big it is, then we monitor to make sure it's not moving, because it's a dynamic system. As more water goes through, it's pushing more contaminant through. And so, it could be migrating in 10 years over here. And so we're trying to capture it to make sure we can, with a straight face, basically tell the people that are drinking this water that it's not exceeding the standard. And that's the monitoring piece. The investigation piece is defining the extent. So there's kind of a difference between investigation and monitoring. Monitoring is just things are staying as we predicted. They haven't changed.
We're in investigation stage right now, am I correct?
We're kind of doing both. We're monitoring the ones that we know are issues.
Yes.
And we're also investigating further.
Okay.
That's allowable.
Any more questions?
Nope.
I think there is another question. Megan Randall. I saw a hand go up. Maybe
Yes, I'm here. You said, Mr. Mueller, you just said as more water goes through. I understand that Vermont is becoming wetter. There's more rainfall with climate change. So is that what you mean by more water, or are you just saying rain over the years?
I meant more water going through the source, which is the landfill. That is not capped.
So it's not getting worse because of the change in the climate and nobody
I can't
knows.
speak
Okay.
directly to that. I mean, it's a
Okay.
dynamic system that has a lot of different variables that come into it. And on a flip side of that, you got scenarios where more water going through dilutes the problem and the concentrations go down. So we have a strong enough source. I could think of a petroleum site that's right next to a river that we monitored once and it was screaming hot, and then there was a flood and we monitored again and it was clean. I don't think you're gonna run into that situation here, but that's kind of the alternate example.
Okay, thank you.
If we don't have any more questions for these guys, I think we can probably let you guys go do your thing, and unless you want to stay for our vote on.
I just had one more. I wanted to kind of bring up the schedule because the last time we went through this, there's an underwriting period for the loan, and so the loan was executed and then it went through underwriting. And given where we are in October 10th, that underwriting period, if I remember correctly, and don't quote me, but it was about 8 weeks. And so we're then into December, which creates challenges. I just want to put that out there. The last loan was approved. I don't see why this one wouldn't, but we could advance this work sooner if we forewent the underwriting period. Tom Brown is the one more to speak to that. He's unfortunately not on the line, so I'm a little ahead of my skis on that piece. But from a schedule perspective, we're waiting for the underwriting to have the loan finalized, signed, done, out the door. We're not doing anything until December, which poses challenges from a weather perspective, and just throwing that out there. It can wait till the spring, but it's not ideal.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Yep.
Suppose I would voice my support for attempting to get this, whether it's phased iterative approach, but certainly to get some additional data on the drinking water supply wells that we've identified that need to be monitored. I would certainly voice my support for getting that scheduled as sooner than later. So sooner than spring. Ideally, I think in the work plan, we have a fall and a spring event for those monitoring points, which I had previously approved, and I hopeful that we can stick to that, even though, we are getting late on here in October.
And that's a good point, Sean. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't sample drinking water wells in the winter and wait for drilling, for the spring.
Okay, perfect. I think you guys have presented to us what we need to make a decision and move forward. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you, everybody.
Yeah,
Have a good
very
night.
grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
What's the board's pleasure on this loan?
I'll make a motion that we approve the loan. Approve applying for the loan? Oh, yes, yes.
And are we sure the amount of money is $537,390?
That's the total. This loan here is a 168,801, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Which brings the total to 537,390.
But the loan that we're acting on is 168,801.
I believe so.
Okay.
If what I'm reading is correct.
Hope you have a nice evening.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I have a motion. Did I get a second?
I seconded it.
Any more discussion on this from the board? All those in favor of applying for this loan for the old transfer station PFAS contamination?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along. Transfer station consulting feasibility study discussion and possible action. Scott, right, Scott, the line is with us if you want to come up. Sure. Scott, just if we have any questions. I'm gonna start on this a little bit. The feasibility study was something that I brought up, I don't even know how many more meetings ago. Month or two, whatever it was. we were trying to find a consulting firm or somebody to come in and do a feasibility study on our transfer station. Our transfer station is operating in the black every year. 2022, they brought in almost 83,000. The expenditures were 161,000. We're $78,500 difference. Where we were in the red. 23 was just over 97,000 revenue, 166 expenditures for $69,000 deficit. Fiscal year 24 was 102, 1025, roughly. These are rough numbers. I have the exact ones in front of me, but expenditures were 175 for a $72,000 deficit. I personally think that my intention was to never close the transfer station from my standpoint. I want to get that out there right off the bat. My intention was to get the balance of revenue versus expenditures into a little bit more of a balanced area. I don't believe we're going to balance it. I don't believe there's any way that we could balance it. So where it paid for itself. That wasn't my goal. My goal is to get the balance a little bit closer. I'd like to get it a lot closer, right? That's my goal.
That was my intention too.
So, where the closing of the transfer station, came from, I really don't know. But that's irrelevant. And I know that we had an RFQ sent out for, and I'm gonna let you talk about that in a minute. Tara looked into this, took a while to find somebody that we could, look, it's probably not something that we're used to looking for, right?
Correct.
But it was around, the consultant to come in was about a $50,000 RFQ to do a feasibility study. Which brings me into, I'm gonna turn it over to Scott for a minute. And then I got a few ideas of my own that I think we need to look into, as a board. So.
Hi, nice to meet you, the folks who I have not met before. My name is Scott Grimlyon. I am a regional planner for the Bennington County Regional Commission, and in that role, I also serve as the program manager for the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance. Tom actually sits on our board as the representative for Pownell. The Solid Waste Alliance is 13 towns in the Bennington County area that all share services together. Myself, 20 hours of my work week every week is solid waste. And we also have another part-timer who puts in consultant that comes in and puts 20 hours towards solid waste. That's the extent of sort of the Solid Waste Alliance's work on this. I'm here. I can also answer questions for you while I'm here if you have ideas about, if you have any questions about the way solid waste operates in the other 13 towns. And then as this conversation has gone on, I've done some more research and spoke to some folks at the state level just to kind of get a sense as to rates of, municipal operations versus groups that have contracted out to other organizations. I've found that there are really just 3 organizations that are available to contract out in the state right now, or that have rather contracted out in the state, private organizations that run transfer stations throughout the state. The large majority of them being operated by Casella. Tara reached out to us again with this concept of helping you guys to get some information. What it would take to have an informed study put together related to how current operations are at the transfer station, and then what sort of opportunities might be there for cost savings, and not to leave anything off the table when it comes to the potential for privatization or the potential for again improving the way the systems go. The way I put together a potential project budget, and I submitted that to Tara earlier this week. basically putting together for that, we think that for around a $50,000 price range, 49,359, we put together a potential project budget for a 6-month period to study this, and that includes, based on what we put together, having a steering committee of people appointed by the board to meet monthly to look at this, to create a much more detailed request for proposals or request for qualifications, and to have myself operate largely as the oversight person for the consultant that would come in and look at these questions that the steering committee would put together for them, and just manage sort of the whole process going through. So yeah, effectively that's what we're looked at. I've found 4 consultants that have done work in the state so far that might be good. And then obviously some of this work would be putting some hours together, me making sure that I find as many people possible to put whatever proposal, the RFQ that the steering committee puts together, in front of as many eyeballs as possible when it comes to possible groups to bid on the work. Based on my conversations with other solid waste management entities across the state, we feel that could be done within this $50,000 price range. And of course, if there were any changes to that, we would have to amend or come back to you to figure out how that would work with a consultant moving forward.
So the 50,000 includes your time and the actual 6 month.
Yeah. So this 50,000 that we put together the proposal. It includes work from BCRC staff on thing, which is effectively my time, but also includes a little bit of, it's the full billable rate, which includes some time for our management in there, and then also our indirect costs, which are a fee that, or is it a percentage fee that's approved by the federal government related to my hourly rate plus the indirect costs. Yeah, effectively, we think that we can get we can get a good amount of information in front of you for that $50,000 price point.
Is that a firm 50,000 or is that approximate?
Well,
excluding the consultant, because you don't know what they're going to come in at, but
I want the consultant fee included in this.
well, no, because we haven't hired a consultant yet.
This is with an estimation of the consultant fee being about $35,000.
It's not written in stone, but it's a pretty accurate number.
That-
The way I looked at your budget,
Right.
Scott, that you put together. Sorry, you're all blurry with the glasses. I need them to read, but it's like,
Sure.
I don't like that. So I apologize. The budget that you put together, had that approximate $35,000. So a $50,000 number is not an absolute concrete number,
No.
but it's a very accurate,
It's a real.
based on your budget, was a very accurate number.
Right. That's assuming we put out the RFQ for services within that $35,000 range. Right.
Okay.
I just want to have it out there so our public knows.
Well,
They don't get to
so,
read everything that we get to read.
right, so basically, I was totally floored by that number, and I'm not saying it's the wrong number, it just kind of really blew my mind, I was thinking, a whole lot less than that, to do some sort of a study, so that kind of throws that out of the way. But I do, as I mentioned, I read that expense versus revenue. Those are real numbers. Those are in the town report. This year alone, and this is for all the taxpayers to know. They're subsidizing the transfer station, the taxpayers. So this year's projected deficit, based on the last 3 years and this year, the projected deficit is $86,000 for the fiscal year. And so if that were to be broken down to users, there's approximately 500 transfer station users. And if it were done a little differently, that would be an extra $172 a year per user on their permit fee. It's just an example to put things into perspective. Because not every taxpayer obviously uses the transfer station. We have approximately 500 users. I guess this is, if we want to get into the process for closing the transfer station, we can ask Scott those questions. I, for one, don't want to close it, but I'm just one person. So it's the board's pleasure. If you want to ask questions about that, that's fine.
I think.
I also don't even know if we want to put it on as a ballot article.
Right now.
Personally, I don't. Personally, what I would like to do is I would like to get a line item budget for the transfer station. I know we get one. I have not looked at one in depth as to try to figure out where. So for instance, and I don't know if we are or not, if we're paying to get rid of recycled metals, something's wrong.
No.
Okay?
No, we're not. We're just paying for the haul.
We're getting paid 50.
We shouldn't be paying for hauling. We should not, our recycled metal, we can call Brownells in White Creek or on White Creek Road. They will put a dumpster in there. They will come get that for free. They will come get it for free. We shouldn't pay a nickel to have our recycled metals hauled out of there. They're getting money for it. We shouldn't pay a nickel, Carl.
I got the invoice right here. Let me look it up.
I'm just saying, we should not be paying
I don't believe we're paying to haul the metal out of there.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't know that.
I will tell you in a minute.
We need to try to figure out how to get this closer. I was hoping we could get a study for, I'm gonna be honest with you, Scott, I was hoping 3, 4, 5 grand, okay? And I'm like, I could swallow that without a lot of trouble. 50 grand I can't swallow, right?
Especially when we're already 86,000.
You know, so that's where I was hoping, but you know, I guess I'm living in the.
And that's where my question came from, because we were talking about what we would like to see on the ballot. And since the taxpayers are paying the deficit of the transfer station, I would like to know their opinion. Would they like us to keep moving forward with having a transfer station or not? And there was no discussion among us anywhere at any time. And I want to make that very clear. And if somebody had called me and asked me that question, I would have been more than happy to tell them. But all you gotta do is look at the budget every year. It's in our town book. And to know that everybody knows that Casella's got their hand on everything and the price is going up.
Well, our town budget is a little over $1 million, right?
Right.
And $200,000 of our budgeted $200,000 or 1 million is for the transfer station. Okay?
Right.
That's a
And
huge
that doesn't,
percentage.
it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it is a lot of
It's a
money.
huge percentage.
It's a huge percentage for our taxpayers. And what's our population? 4,000 almost?
Probably is.
And we're lucky if we sell 500 permits.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy to me.
I just think we need to.
It has nothing to do, I just want people to know that it has nothing to.
Permits are household,
Right.
and not individual
With the
taxpayers.
staff.
So you probably want to look at the household numbers instead.
We right now are getting, for metal, no hauling fee, $51 they're paying us for metal.
As they should. That's fine.
They should, but
That's fine.
they're not
They're paying us $51 what, a ton?
a ton.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of things that we need to do over there differently. I think we need to stop guessing at the volume that comes in to the transfer station. Bring in a dump trailer and you guess at what it is. We're the only place, I think, in the whole county that guesses. Everybody else weighs.
Everybody else has got scales.
We got a scale that you drive across. We guess at the volume that you put in there. But we pay by the ton to haul it out.
So we should be charging by the ton going in.
So there's a lot of things that we really need to do that should have been done and even should have been started by me or whoever is on this board, however long we've been there, that need to be changed. And it needs to be changed now. And that's, like I said, we're charging by the yard in a dumpster, a dump trailer or a pickup or whatever, and then we pay by the ton, right? So a load of, rotted out 2x4s that come through, right, they go into a dumpster somewhere versus, a load of
Concrete blocks that goes in, all right? Yeah, we're paying to the yard to get rid of it and then.
That's right. So we need to really sit down and do some homework on this. So because, and I know where you were going, Angie, with putting it on and let the taxpayers and the residents vote on it. I understand that totally. But I also want to make sure that we're giving out accurate information.
But how are they supposed to vote on it when they don't have accurate information?
That's what I'm saying.
That's right, but that's how to get us talking about it, by
Right.
putting it on the ballot.
That's right.
moving it
I
forward.
just, I think, I don't know, maybe you can answer this question, Scott. Is there, maybe you don't know. Would there be an opportunity to get a portable scale brought in just to, get a ballpark idea of what we're doing, if it makes sense? Does my question make sense?
Yeah.
Could we bring a scale in and see where we're at and what we're doing?
I don't know. I've never heard of a portable scale before, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
Mhm.
I mean, you have a scale that is in the town that is not being operated right now, in the old TAM site, that Casella is no longer, using. I don't know if that might be something that would be available for repurposing. But, I mean, I could potentially look into something like that.
I'm just curious.
There's gotta be other ways to weigh things. And again, I'm not sure what, quantity of waste is sort of coming in those regards as far as the.
Right. I just, I don't know the answer to this, right? Are we, maybe we're overcharging, right? Maybe we're charging too much per yard versus the tonnage. I gotta bet we're not,
But we don't know how much I talked to Stefan about it a little bit. And what Stefan said to me was, you got to figure out how much goes into that dumpster and how much comes out. So that means you've got to figure out how many bags, if you're doing it by the bags, that goes in there. He used to do that.
Yeah, but we're paying to get rid of it by the ton.
Correct.
But we need to know the tonnage that goes in, whether it's in a bag or loose. It's all about the ton. We need to know if we have 2,000 pounds going in, right?
Yes, but
Yes.
where he's going is, if you know that, say that container got pulled, it weighed 4,000 pounds, and you had a count of bags and it was 336 bags, then you could break it down per the.
I agree with what you're saying, Mike. I agree with what you're saying. All I'm going to say was what Stefan had talked to me about.
If you have one dumpster full of bags of feather pillows, right? And then you have a dumpster full of bags of shingles.
I understand
What
that.
difference?
Right, but
The number of bags makes no difference. You're paying by the ton, you need to charge by the ton.
Right.
It's to get everything in balance.
That's one of the
But
reasons
the
why
number
I'm
of bags
trying to
is irrelevant. You put one bag in a
But do you
30-yard
do,
dumpster.
but do you do the weight for the garbage that, let's say, well, the citizen brings in, they got 3 bags of garbage. Do we weigh that garbage and throw it in? And that's the question.
And then they weigh the trucks or trailers.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's,
Those are all generous.
we don't weigh in.
Otherwise you charge by whether it's a 12-gallon bag, et cetera,
And that's probably fine.
Primarily.
But when we have dumpsters and dump trailers that go in, I mean, honestly, I've brought a dump trailer in there and I know the size of my dump trailer can figure out cubic yardage. And I'm not sure that we're accurate on figuring out the cubic yards. Now, I also know that it doesn't even matter when you're figuring out cubic yards, when you're paying by the ton to get rid of it.
Correct.
Okay, that we have to correct that. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna keep the transfer station open, there's things we have to.
Then I guess that's the first thing we got to do.
have to correct it now. Now is the time. It's on the table. It's an open discussion, and now is the time to correct these things.
I don't have a problem with it.
I know. No, I know. And I'm glad you brought it up now, because I was a little mad at first, but now I'm glad.
No, you're still pissed.
No, the taxpayers, they have a right to know.
They do.
They should have a right to vote on it since they're supporting a deficit every single year.
We should support a deficit every year and everything.
Huh?
It's a deficit every year in everything we do.
I know, but if we're only selling 500
Oh,
permits
I know.
at $60, that's only $30,000 a year that we're bringing in revenue. Then you gotta account for their free dump day, what they bring in on their truck that we have to pay for. It's just not working.
Well, I think we need to.
So can I just ask Bill a question? Bill, or I'm sorry, is it Bill?
I'm
Scott, I'm so sorry, Scott. Jeez, it's been a long day.
That's really close, Bill and Scott.
I'm so sorry. It's been a long day. I get up at 3 and go to work for 4. But anyways, if we close the transfer station, if that's what they decided they wanted to do, what would be the other revenue for people? Would they be able to go out of town and say, bring their garbage to Bennington or?
So the town, is required in some way, shape or form to make sure that there are options available for their residents.
Right.
The town of Woodford has a contract with the town of Bennington in order to provide, services at the Bennington transfer station. It's possible that the town could pursue some sort of option like that. They could also provide, there are less that sort of like dumpster, there's a system where in the Northern Kingdom that they have where towns have just a dumpster available but on certain hours and it's sort of just a dumpster that's available and again it's a little more of like a permit fee kind of situation or you pay by the bag I think in that situation. I can get you more information on that if that's a model you're more interested in pursuing. But effectively there are other options if the town does close a transfer station. However, my understanding is also that for an independently run transfer station, your sort of costs are sort of comparable to other ones of your scale. Shaftesbury also operates at about the same cost. The other towns in our alliance are all operated by Casella. All of their transfer stations are operated by Casella. And they do have a lower cost per capita, I understand.
I have one more question.
No, your allotment's up for
I'm sorry. For what we're doing right now, is there any chance that we could do any kind of contamination to the ground? For what we're going through with the other part of the transfer station?
So you guys are effectively right now putting everything directly into a dumpster. So that's a closed container and that's okay. If you have something like a tipping floor area, then you're potentially adding some contamination in that time period when the trash is on the ground before. But those are only really licensed when they are completely impermeable surfaces. Town of Bennington just repoured their concrete floor because they were having issues with the permeability. They had cracked their concrete floor too much, so there was sort of maintenance. But I believe right now you guys are basically putting everything directly into dumpsters.
Right.
So you should not. So your current risk is a lot lower than of additional contamination is a lot lower than if you had a tipping room floor. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have one small. Do you know of any other towns that offer a free dump day?
Yeah, actually a number of towns do it, specifically with items like tires or other things to, targeting. They often work with their, DPW because they feel that, or I have heard, and again, I don't have solid numbers on this, but I have heard that offering things like free dump day, does drastically reduce the amount of, roadside debris that the Department of Public Works has to clean up.
So has Joel gotten back to us with his numbers for the money that's left for ARPA?
Joe,
Oh, for a building?
Yeah.
No.
Because we still have ARPA money. I mean, I'd hate to spend. But but we could use ARPA money, 50,000.
what's your thoughts, Mike?
My thought is I don't want to spend $50,000
either.
on a feasibility study, okay? My thought is to I wanna do an in-depth analysis of our board, from the board,
Mhm.
on our transfer station costs and on what it costs us to operate, where we could be more efficient. I was hoping, look at, none of us sitting here can do a feasibility study the way we want to have it done through a consulting firm, right?
Right.
But I also believe that we're intelligent enough to sit here and figure out if we're charging, if we break it down and we're charging $20 a ton for incoming garbage, right? And it's costing us $50 a ton to get, right? We know that there's a perfect example of where we can try to balance it out, right? But we don't know that because we don't know the tonnage. We don't know how much we're charging per ton because we're charging per bag, or when a dump trailer comes in or a pickup comes in, we're charging by volume.
Correct.
Which is the wrong way to be charging that.
Correct.
We need to figure out a scale system to charge. If we're paying by weight, we need to charge by weight. If we were paying by yard to get rid of it, then charging by yard is fine. That's my opinion.
I've done a little bit of looking into it. Our transport costs are killing us.
For the tonnages.
For the tonnage that's going out, it's killing us.
I was hoping we could have that discussion before we.
No, but I mean, I've done
Now's the time, right? So.
I've done those numbers and it's just, you can't ship a dumpster out with 1 ton of material on it. All right, and then it costs you $212 to take that dumpster to wherever Casella takes it. Okay.
The cost per dumpster is the same whether it weighs 2 ton or 20 ton.
Correct.
Right? I'm probably, 20 tons.
Well, I mean, not to where, I mean.
I'll do a certain number, but a 2 ton dumpster going out of there, a 30-yard 2 ton dumpster is costing us the same amount of money as sending out a 30-yard 10 ton dumpster.
Well, within reason, because we're paying for something a ton.
But the tonnage stays the same, but the hauling doesn't.
The hauling stays the same. The tonnage changes, but.
The tonnage can change.
Right.
The tonnage, if we increase.
We pay so much per ton.
If we increase the tonnage, then we wouldn't have to haul so much.
Exactly. So our hauling would go down.
Our hauling would be down.
So that's where we need to come up with a better plan.
No,
We really need to come up with a better plan here.
Yes, and that's why I was hoping that we as a board could meet.
Well, we're gonna
before
have
this.
I guess we're gonna have that discussion and we're gonna have this discussion onward.
No, and
that's a good thing.
Yes, and we need to. So I hate tabling things, but I think.
We're not gonna table it. We're gonna,
Well,
I
then
think
we're not
we're
gonna
gonna,
accept the 50,000.
well,
bid.
so we're not gonna table that. We're
That's
just gonna
where I'm
say,
going.
yeah, we're not gonna table it. We're gonna say, I don't think, I'm gonna ask for a motion. I'm gonna ask for a motion from the board that we're not interested in a $50,000 feasibility study
Yeah, not at this time.
at this time. I'm gonna ask for that motion.
I make that motion that we are not willing to do a $50,000 feasibility study at this time without further investigation of our own.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion on that? All those in favor? And I.
But thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in.
If you have any other questions or, as you continue to look at this, let me know.
Yep.
I'll happy to continue to give you as much information.
Maybe you could, look for a portable scale that we could put in there for a short period of time, a month or, I don't know, what do you think, Bill? You've been over there. Would we get an accurate estimate in a month? What time of year?
Yeah, you get, most people are there every week.
So we would get.
You get an idea.
If we had a portable scale set up for 4 weeks, we would have a pretty accurate estimate of what goes in.
I mean, even looking.
More data is better than less data. Any data is better than no data.
Yeah.
Even looking into the scale down there, like you said, at Casella's, wouldn't be a bad option to see if they can.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're not using it, you know.
I know, but that's something that's
Moving
not
that would be is difficult. I don't know what a portable scale exists.
portable scale that we can put there. So when the,
I was thinking full-time, leave it there.
Yeah.
That's it. Use that instead of bagging it. Yeah. Oh,
No,
I just,
actually, a
I just think
couple
we need to,
That's what Bennington does, right? You drive in on the truck, they
You
wait.
drive in, they weigh you, and then you turn around and they weigh you on the way out as well.
Yeah, that's what they charge.
Actually, a couple of townspeople came to me and were even suggested if we could take and get Casella's old scales.
well, I think we need to look into,
So-
try to see what we can find there. And maybe there's nothing available, but it's a start, right? So I don't want to table this. I want to move forward with it. I think we need to, I think we need to, I know what you're saying. I want to move forward with doing an in-depth analysis from our own, from this board on the expenditures. I know you've already started this, Carl. Is that something you can continue with?
I can do it if I've got help.
Okay.
I can help. I don't know how much help I can be, but I can help.
Well, I mean, just transfer numbers
We're
basically.
just basically doing the number part of it. I mean, I've done a lot of the trash numbers. The trick is going to be now is the scales and stuff.
Yeah, the scales are gonna be one piece and, working with our staff to pack a little more. And Carl and I also were looking into different apparatus.
Yeah.
And maybe making a suggestion to the board as far as to be able to pack more efficiently.
I just think, and I'd like to bring this back to the next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to have this brought back, whatever, what's the day? Today's what, 10? So it'll be the 24th, right?
Yep.
Maybe we
Oh,
just
I'll
have
be
to,
here. I'll have to be here.
do,
I'll have to get here somewhere. Even if I do it from Zoom, I'll be involved.
Like getting that open again.
Yeah. 22nd.
Boy, the doctors must love you. Hey, obviously you're paying for their vacation.
Over Key West here, they come.
Whatever, at least I'll be able to walk. I'd like to bring this back to 24th and keep moving
Yeah.
forward with this.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then at this time, we're not gonna talk about putting it on as a ballot article, I don't think,
I don't think it's helpful.
I just don't think we can put it on as a ballot article because we're not gonna be able to. If I'm gonna put a ballot article out there, this is my opinion, if I'm gonna put a ballot article out there, I want an educated ballot article, I don't wanna guess.
Right.
I don't wanna say, oh, here's what we're thinking of doing, no. I want an educated ballot article where we give educated choices.
And we're going to be, and the thing, okay,
Accurate information.
and then we put it on a ballot. But the problem is once we're done with the ballot, we're still back here again.
Right. So I think this year, although it was a good idea, I just think it's probably maybe next year's ballot article, but I think that,
it was just a discussion.
no, and it was great, guys, going tonight, and
It's
that's-
going tonight.
and a lot of good things came out of it, so that's fine. That's totally fine. All right, I think we're done with that one. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you,
So-
guys.
Thank you very much. Eric, can reach out to me at all if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Highway Department request for a credit card discussion and possible action. The general fund has a credit card in the town of Pownell and Terra's name. Joel would like to apply for his own for the Highway Department. However, the bank would like to have approval of this in minutes as part of the application process.
I think, that's a good thing. It's that way, if one needs to order something, that we don't have already on a contract with, and it's a part that he needs and it falls within the monies that we allow, then, he should be able,
There's a set limit on that, right? You can only go so high.
I mean, it's already in the.
Oh, I didn't realize it's right on the card?
It's in the purchasing policy. Just
Policy.
Okay.
So.
I'll entertain a motion for credit card.
So moved,
Second it.
Any more discussion?
following the purchase.
Following.
Policy.
Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Resignation of the town employee discussion and plan. Will resign from the buildings grounds position. His last day will be the 18th. we're hesitant to advertise or post because it doesn't seem cost effective to have a part-time employee being, just a cleaner. Contract to hire part-time to meet our needs, depending on the board's wishes, whichever way is decided. The needs to be filled are the cleaning of the town office, plowing and shoveling of the town offices and church, garbage removal of the town office and all parks. It is possible to request these services of other departments or hire them out. Again, depending on what the board would like. Tara wishes to not have a split role between highway and general any longer, so Joel will need to speak with the board regarding his wishes or his plan moving forward. Here's Joel's. That's why I held this off. Gotta find the right piece of paper. I got it. This is from Joel. I'm talking with Tara about Bill leaving the town. He's decided he'd like to hire a per diem plower to fill his place and in the spring advertise for another full-time position for the highway if agreeable with the board. My recommendation is to follow Joel's recommendation of hiring a per diem plower and have Tara reach out to see what cleaning costs would be and she can bring it back. But maybe we hire a part-time person to, there we go, too many papers. For the other-
Correct, but how is that going to work? Are we gonna follow the same policy we followed with Tom? I'd hate to, where we're gonna put out a proposal, put out there for somebody to be hired. And then,
Posting for per diem.
and however you wanna do it, but open that up to be hired as for applicants.
Are we gonna break it down to?
Well, yeah, I think we don't just give Joel free rein to hire, you know.
That was my only question.
Yeah, I think
The process.
we post the job.
We post the job, yes.
And here's my thought. We post the job. Joel interviews the candidates and then brings us back his recommendation.
Mhm.
I mean, you guys gotta work with him every day, not me.
I agree with it.
Or not
Or
every
he
day,
could-
but on the, you know, when he needs them on plowing, right?
Correct.
So we post it for, I would think we could post this one for 3 weeks.
So I'm a little confused, just a quick question, because Bill, you take care of all the sidewalks and everything here and the plowing here. Is that going to be under the per diem plower?
I don't know.
We have to talk to Joel as far as the set duties, as far as that goes, but he still needs another body in a plow truck.
And I understand that, but if his last day is the 18th. Because,
Are we
no,
gonna have to contract, I guess what Angie's asking is, are we gonna have to contract for somebody to plow the town office and shovel the walks?
walks.
Possibly.
I think there's something we need to talk to Joel about, but I don't think that's a huge.
Because they
issue.
you also take care of the church sidewalk and
I
everything.
think, I think the person would be able to do it.
It's part-time.
They just have to take the time to come over and hit this in the morning and then.
Okay.
Right. And as far as the cleaning goes.
I mean,
like, we need
that's
to
totally
we
separate.
need
I
to separate.
understand that. So I was just making sure that the plowing and the sidewalks were all together
Well, before it used to be included.
with his job.
It wasn't included. Our mowing person also did it, but he applied for the plowing contract doing the,
Yeah, and then we ended up doing it anyway, with our employees.
Right.
They didn't do it anyway. Our employees did it. Well, that was kind of a problem, but they still sent us a bill.
Okay,
Yeah. And then move forward with the,
before you know what, I'm sure snow will be flying.
so, yeah.
oh, yeah.
So the per diem, I'd like to give a 3-week. That gives Joel a week to interview, right,
Mhm.
before it comes back to us. Just looking for a date. 3 weeks from now would be, everything would be due by Halloween, by the 31st.
And then our next.
And actually, you could go, because our next meeting would be the 14th of November after that. We have one the 24th,
Right.
and then our next meeting would be the 14th of November. I don't think that's gonna be too late to hire somebody.
No,
It'll be,
Historically, of course, I'll say this and get.
Yeah.
knock on plastic.
Yeah,
well, considering October 4th, 1987.
well, if we get our applicants done by the 31st, Joel could interview, give him a week, almost 2 weeks to interview, right? And then bring his recommendation to us on the 14th for that particular person. And then, it gives Tara some time to figure out how we're gonna define the stuff in here, right? Which, right now, we're gonna have to be 1, 2. I don't wanna wait till if the 24th is our next meeting. Well, we could advertise and do everything on the 14th,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Here and for the town. Okay. All right. Everybody's in agreement?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh. Sorry, I'm not moving it along time. Everybody took up way more of my time than normal. Community capacity building, any grant use discussion and possible action. As you know, Pownell was awarded this grant some months ago. It was used to complete an ADA assessment on the old town hall. The grant totals $4,000. The assessment only used $2,500. There are, of course, restrictions on the use. Tara has been working with Callie at the BCRC to plan a use for the remaining funds. She contacted the Energy Education Program about holding a home heat transfer workshop in Pownell, which would partner with Button Up Vermont and Efficiency Vermont. Tara would like to plan an event with the school for families to attend with giveaways, raffles, etc. The event may also feature food or other incentives for people to attend. This is all in the planning phase, but all of the expenses would be covered by the grant, and the event fits nicely within the town plan's energy goals. She requests the board's blessing to move forward with that use for the grant funds.
I'll make the motion that we accept Tara's recommendation and go forward with the grant funds.
I'll second it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Anything to get the kids involved.
Yes.
Not bad if you
Well,
get,
not only that, but if we can turn around and help 2 or 3 people.
Just
save some money on their heating.
maybe it helps some lower income
Yeah.
families.
Absolutely.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
See, if it wasn't for everybody else, I'm going along, I'm not. Budget planning requirements for departments and emergency services discussion. So let's begin a budget based on a plan, not plan based on a budget. Did everybody review the town plan, become more familiar with its contents?
Yeah.
Tara's provided us with statutes. Everybody read those. State guidance on why planning is so important, something we've gotten away from or not a process we have been following, but should get back to. Should be an overall plan drafted by the board, which would serve as a capital program, and then department heads and emergency service departments should provide an annual plan with their budgets at least. Tara also suggests asking other boards, commissions, and committees for a plan for the upcoming year, not a very detailed document, but at least an overview to make sure their plan and goals match the capital program. It's an initial discussion, but if we like the idea, bring the planning process back to the next meeting since budget season is quickly approaching.
That's good. I'd like to look into it a little bit more, do some more reading on it. But I agree with the concept wholeheartedly.
Well, we used to do that, right?
Yep.
All of our commissions used to have to submit a budget.
Yeah.
I submit one as a zoning administrator, although I haven't changed it in forever. I also think this is a good time I think we need to sit down based on our meeting that we had at the rescue squad in September, the rescue squad building with our emergency services departments, the fire departments and the rescue squad. I think it's time that we sit down with them and come up with a plan that they're happy with. When I say they're, I mean the fire department's in the rescue squad. Justin, we have Justin Alansky sitting in with us tonight as a guest from the Pownell Valley Fire Department. Whether or not those, because I know how I feel, whether or not our emergency services departments, emergency services responders would rather see their budgets or their ballot, if they would rather see it as ballot articles or built into the budget. And I think that's a decision that they have to make, but I think it's a discussion that we need to sit down in a workshop. Whether we sit down with each individual department or organization, or whether we sit down as a group, I don't care. I think we need to sit down, and I think we can sit down now
Yes.
and figure out what they want. I know how I feel about it, but that's just me. And it's ultimately, I believe it should be their decision, not the select board's decision.
That's what
Okay.
we said last meeting.
That's right. So I think we need to schedule some workshops, and
Well, we got Justin here. We could ask him which way. Oh, you want to wait? Or you want to wait?
there's no way that I would put it on one person's back.
No.
And I would not expect him to answer it, because I know Justin and he's gonna tell me he's not gonna. And I respect that. I think we need to bring in.
Well, you guys
whether it's-
usually meet once a week, right? Or is it once a month? Yeah, so you have,
meetings depending on whether it's a meeting or whether it's.
Do we?
Here's how I would like to set this up. I don't think we need 100% of the membership body in a workshop. I think we need, however they have their organization set up, we have their president, who's usually their business manager, right? I think that's how it always was. We have their chief officers.
Yep.
If they so want, all three of them or whatever want to be there. I think we have, maybe their treasurer comes in, right?
yep,
And maybe, I don't know, you still have trustees, I'm sure you do, right? But I think that's up to the individual departments and organizations to bring in whoever they want to into a workshop. I think we schedule 3 workshops, 1 for each group to start with. And then go from there. Now I also think that I would love to see uniformity on, I don't want to see 2 to say we like to stay on the ballot and 1 say, oh, we want to go in the budget. I would love to see uniformity across the board.
Everybody goes one way. That way it's everybody's treated equal.
So I just think that's, I just, that's my opinion. And I think that's what I'd like to do with that. The other stuff is pretty easy to bring out the boards and commissions and all that stuff to come up with a budget.
Yeah.
To make them do that. That's pretty easy. I think, to me, the emergency services, that's a big thing that we need to get. We need to get it right. We need to get it right. We need to get it on the table and we need to get it done the right way. And so that our first responders don't have to worry about where their funding's coming from every year from moving forward.
Do you have a time frame, Mike? You're thinking?
Yep, I'd like to have it done.
Because I know you've got medical stuff.
That's okay. I can,
suck it up, Buttercup.
I will suck it up, Buttercup.
It'd be nice to have it done.
Hey, I've been there.
I would love to have it done by the end of November, because of budgeting. Yep, you're right, Jamie. And I think these workshops need to be held on a different night other than a Thursday night, or we hold them on a Thursday when we don't have a regular meeting. Now, I would love to set up a workshop for November 7th. We don't have a meeting on that night. Because we go the second Monday, so our meeting would be the 14th.
One at a time, or are you gonna bring them all in?
No, I think one
One at a time.
One at a time?
I think you start with one at a time.
Okay.
Yep.
Because it'll get too confusing.
Right, so I think we certainly could do one. We certainly could do one next Thursday, although I think that's too quick for everybody to get there, no matter what.
And we don't have to have it on a Thursday either.
That's right. I'm just going by Thursdays, right?
That's fine.
Because we have
Yep.
Halloween
Yes.
We have Halloween and we have the 7th. That could kill 2 of them right there.
Yeah.
And then the 21st of November if we wanted to stay on Thursday nights. I don't, Hannah, you have a DRB public hearing scheduled on a Wednesday at some point, right?
We did that one, we are going to have another one, but it isn't scheduled
It's
yet.
not scheduled yet.
Nothing on Thursday nights, but I know.
Do we want to meet a little earlier?
I would like to meet earlier on a Thursday night. I'd like to say, I'd like to start at 5:30, half an hour, right?
Is that too early for you guys?
I'll reach out to the department heads tomorrow. I'll reach out to Jason, Becky and Craig or Jamie.
And find out who wants to go when or can go when.
I'd like to have one the 31st. I'd like to see who could come in here on that night. Do you guys still do your business meetings on the second Mondays?
Yes, that's correct.
So Pownell does theirs probably on the second Monday as well, right?
Yeah.
So that would, you guys would be able to talk about this Monday, the 14th.
Next
Because
Monday.
that's next Monday,
Yeah.
right? So everybody should, I don't know what Becky's, so I should be able to get either Pownell Valley or Pownell in here on the 31st, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to plan the 31st, the 7th, and the 21st. Right now, those nights and workshops designed specifically for discussion with the emergency services. And then we could get them all in here together, hopefully, before budget season and say this is the way we want to go. Or whatever way it is.
So what are you expecting from the fire departments on those nights? Just so I can bring.
Exactly. And I'll explain this too, but I probably won't have to now. I will the other two. I would like your officers and business portion of the department, right? To come in here and discuss with this board how you would like to see your funding. Whether you would like to see it as a budget item in the town voted budget or as ballot articles. Specific ballot articles. And I think there's some discussion that needs to be had on it, right? But I think it's the decision of each of our organizations. It's not for me to say, okay, I want to put their money in the budget or I want to have it as ballot articles. It's for you guys to tell us how you're more comfortable with it. Right? You see what I'm saying?
So we're not submitting numbers at this point.
No.
Right now we're figuring the.
Ballot article or whether it's gonna be presented with a.
Right now it's just a process.
General fund.
That's right, the general funds. That's right, Jeff. No numbers.
Yeah.
I don't need any numbers. Yep, whatever it is. And then if we decide, okay, we want it on the general budget, in the general fund, then okay, you submit to this board, we want X number of dollars.
We're trying to get the process figured out.
Actually, I just don't want to, I want to be prepared.
No, we're not, right now, we just want to get the process. So then once we figure the process out, then we start with the numbers after that.
Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. And I mean, it's just, like I said, I know how I would like to see it done, but that's just me and I'm not you guys.
The purpose of the numbers on the follow-up meetings is so we can educate the public on why those numbers are where they are.
Absolutely.
I mean.
We've already had some numbers thrown out at the rescue squad building.
Yes.
Publicly. So it's not, the numbers aren't really a secret, but I don't even want to discuss numbers. That's
Right.
irrelevant on how we want to do it.
Right.
It's irrelevant.
One step at a time.
Yep. But whether it's a ballot article or a line item.
Right.
The next meetings after that, that way we can educate everybody on what they're voting for and why, the emphasis of needing the number.
Does that make sense? Perfect. All right, we can move on. I believe, anybody have anything else on that? Any questions on it, Justin? We answer all your questions?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. 16, Southern Vermont Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Project Submission Discussion and Possible Action. Tara applied for the CEDS designation for the Old Town Hall as a community center before the board asked me to pull back on that idea. She received a request for an updated project submission and requested she has the board's blessing to apply for this designation for the new Pownell Valley Firehouse need. 10 of the submitted projects will be chosen by a committee for recognition as vital projects. Inclusion in CEDS that helps build a regional awareness of a project and expresses alignment with regional goals. And it's important when seeking funding for projects, a relatively simple application and process, but a tight turnaround. So she'd like to,
Did it give them money now on that? I couldn't remember.
I don't remember,
As far as the
Jamie.
dollar amount. Because if we were awarded something like that, possibly put it towards our planning and engineering to help you guys that way.
I don't remember seeing an amount.
I don't remember seeing an amount, Jamie, and I don't have it.
I did. I wouldn't.
Does it matter the amount at this point? Do we authorize her
I
to
don't think we just
go forward?
authorize her to.
Yeah, no, we can authorize
Because
them.
we can always turn around and say, if it's like, they're gonna give us 50 cents. No, we're good, thank you.
Right, we don't have to take it. Then.
We don't have, so I would
I would say to let her move forward with it.
let her move forward.
I'm not gonna give her a blessing though.
No,
Because that got us in trouble one time already.
We won't, that's not a blessing. This is just a,
We're gonna authorize,
Yes.
I would
Right.
like to authorize Tara to, move forward and apply for this grant for the Pownell Valley Firehouse need.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Public comment, maybe public comment here?
Jim has his hand up.
Jim Costas, North Mason Hill Road. First of all, I apologize before. Unfortunately, there wasn't a way for me to unmute my screen, which got fixed. But in any case, your discussion on the landfill, I thought was super. I mean, I think that's what the town needs. And unfortunately, though, that wasn't on the agenda. Your agenda was the discussion with Scott. So I just wanted to make sure that maybe in the future, if you're going to get
That's not true, Jim.
Okay, all right.
Well, that's okay. Go ahead.
That's fine. I guess I was just surprised that Tom wasn't invited to stay. I do think he's still our supervisor, or have things maybe changed over at the landfill. But in any case, the one point I want to make is that you guys are relying a lot on users for that landfill. But similar to the I can't even think of the solid waste place. All the town is paying for that bond, which is for the building down there. I'm paying $75 for that bond. I'm doing it as a community member, and I don't mind paying that to keep the waste out of the river and everything else. But I don't think I should be paying that if I'm not a user. So you're looking at two ways. The same thing happens with the school district. We as a community are paying for the kids that are not our kids going into the school district. Yes, it's a law that we have to pay for education. Yes, it's a law that we have to have a fire protection, or we have to have a transfer station. And I'm not sure if it's a law that we have to supply water and everything, but I think it comes down to the point the townspeople want to work as a community. And if it is not losing money, if it is losing money, we're all willing to contribute towards it to keep our town clean. So I just want to make sure that that is put on the table also. I looked at the budget up at Shasbury. They're paying Casella $110,000 to run that. I'd be interested in finding out what is their revenue and expenses, and maybe look at them, other communities, to find out, yes, it is maybe being subsidized because we have salaries, we have building, we do have solar system over there that is not included in your numbers. You kept out the $3,000 for that. if we can get a solar system over there to help pay for it, it's less than what the townspeople are paying. So just make sure you keep that in line with all the transfer station, the fire department, and also with the wastewater treatment and the education. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any more public comment here?
That seems to be all.
Did you say no? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Don't forget to go look at the aurora borealis out there.